Welcome to True Power with Simi Arora. Today's guest left a conventional path to solve a problem that all of us quietly carry. How do we take care of our parents when we're living thousands of miles away? He's the founder of Sahayak, a service helping NRI families take care of their parents and their well-being while living miles and miles away. Welcome, Nitin, today to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Simi. I'm excited to be here and to participate in your podcast.
Of course, very warm welcome. So I'd like to know a little bit more about your journey. So how's it been so far building this amazing initiative? And I'd love to get to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, this has been my journey. I would say it's been a combination of a curiosity, resilience, and trying to solve a problem, which I thought is an opportunity. I don't call it as a problem because, from the childhood, I was always curious to know how can we make something better. So that has been kind of like, a benchmark, for me to start my journey. And growing up in India, come from a family of doctors. My dad and mom, I saw their career, their profession being doctors, which was something I didn't understand when I was growing up, when I was little. The dedication, the focus, there was no glamour in their career. Like today, everything is glamorous. But being doctors, having that, the mentality to help people, the accountability, the passion, and they're always there for their patients. That kind of gave me a mentality, or I would say a passion to kind of do something which has an impact. So my journey with that curiosity and trying to understand what life is all about has made me come up with this challenging situation, converting the challenging situation into something I want to create that impact and help the families.
That's so wonderful. And it seems like you have had a lot of impact of your parents in your upbringing. And, all the founders who come here on the podcast, they always talk about the challenges that they went through in their childhood, starting from, let's say, having some sort of self-doubt. How was it for you starting your journey of this, being a founder and starting something of your own? Because I do believe when you came to the US, you wanted to pursue that most of the Indians, when they come out of the country, they pursue like a job, like,
Right.
Finding more stability. And from your journey, you also mentioned that you have been in different startups before. Was that the impact of some incidents in your childhood that shaped you up? Or is it something that you figured out like in the later stages of your career?
That's a good question. Definitely growing up, the childhood, the exposure that I had, so my parents emphasized on discipline, being sincere to what you do. And they told me there is no shortcut. And even though I didn't take that, the medicine as my profession, because of my curiosity, I wanted to build things, I ended up being a software engineer.
Okay.
So I came to this country, I graduated from Oklahoma State, and as any, immigrant, took up a job in Fortune 10 company. And I was there for 18 years. And during my career, even though I was pursuing my career as I was growing my career, I always had the vacuum in me that, I'm in this structured environment, right, where everything is predefined. You have a blueprint. And it's like you just do what you're asked to do.
Yeah.
Yes, I was lucky enough to be involved in innovation and new product launches, which I loved it because I'm always looking for opportunities where a vision or an idea, can be made into a reality. So that's how my career has been. But what happened was, because of that the hunger that I had, I wanted to build something which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So along with that, I got into this entrepreneurial track. But the most important triggering point in my life was when my mom was badly impacted with COVID. So I was in my entrepreneurial journey. I was doing my startups. It was completely on the technology based, but it had an impact, not as a human touch.
Yeah.
So for me, in 2023, that year, it completely changed my perspective.
Yeah.
And that time I kind of, it brought back my childhood experiences, which was completely blind for me, that I used to always wonder, why does my parents work so much?
Yeah. The
Yeah. So, it's their profession, but I saw how passionate they were.
intentions
Right?
they're putting in.
And being accountable and being there for their patients and able to make those decisions, because you're dealing with the
They
life
never
of a
forced you to become a doctor? I was just curious about.
they kind of gave me an opportunity. I was taken to an operation theater when I was 9 years old because my mom was an anesthetist, senior anesthetist, and my dad was a physician, and my father's father was also a doctor.
Okay.
And I'm being the only child. They kind of assumed that I can take that path, but they never forced me.
Never forced, yeah.
They kind of gave me the exposure of being a doctor, but for some reason, that was not something that I enjoyed because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
So now, looking back, I think those were my stepping stones, which made me kind of, being in that leadership position, helped me making a decision, being accountable, because I always felt, leadership is not about authority. Leadership is about being there for your team,
Right.
being that accountability,
Yeah.
right? So all those things, if I trace back, I learned watching my parents.
Right.
I didn't understand. I always felt, oh my God, my parents have no time to spend time with me because middle of the night, they're gone. Like I'm the only child. I'm like, my summer holidays used to be spending time with them in the hospitals.
So
So now looking back, I'm like, wow, those were the actual experiences which made me look at the leadership and building something that is impactful.
right.
So,
So you
that's
brought in like
exciting.
the wellness as well as the technology together. I mean, your experience with the technology and the wellness attributes of your parents' life being doctors and all the work that they did with people. So you brought it together and built
Absolutely.
bridge that gap, right?
Bridge that gap.
And I think the deviation sometimes is important. Like, you started in the technology space, you learned better, you understood the mechanics of that, and you brought in the leadership in the wellness space, which is through Sahayak that you have built right now,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
It's kind of like connecting the dots back again.
100%.
Nitin, I'm also very curious about what would you say to the new founders who are also building in this space, and especially now, so entrepreneurship is at its boom. We have AI and access to the technology, and there are so many new ideas. Like you got this idea, and then you had the experience of technology field, and you had the understanding of the wellness space, and you brought it together. How would you want to describe the challenges that you face? Because leaving a job and becoming an entrepreneur is like two different mindsets, right? And lots of our audiences who are watching this today, they are probably navigating that path, right? They are sort of looking at this new disposition where they are either competing with each other, like in that space, or they're looking at themselves as like, I'm not good enough. So I want to like know your personal journey with it. Like, did you have self-doubts? Because, having a stable job and getting a salary, and now you're like, okay, you're on your own and you want to start something that is either going to be successful or not going to be successful. So I want to go behind the scenes and talk about that a little.
Absolutely. So definitely, when I decided to be an entrepreneur, when I wanted to do something on my own, that excitement, okay, I'm building something now on my own, that excitement will give you that gateway to enter into entrepreneurial journey. Now, as you start into that journey, as you're traveling that space, that's when you'll be like, oh my God, I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know whether it will work.
Yeah.
You get too many questions, too many negativity enters your system because you're responsible for everything. There is no structured platform, right? So what I learned through my journey, it was not an easy journey, and I need to give a lot of credits to my wife, Sindhu, who gave me that strength, and she was a pillar. And because obviously you want to understand that there is a lot of uncertainty in everything you do. When you start accepting that uncertainty and looking at each problem that you faced as something you learn, if you fail at something, you need to look forward and then use those data points as something like a learning lesson.
Yeah.
So for any entrepreneur, anybody who's in that entrepreneurial journey, it's never a linear.
Yeah.
Even in life, we always predict our life is going to be like this. Our career is going to take this path. But we don't consider the setbacks, the uncertainty that can happen. When you're able to accommodate those uncertainties and look at every challenge or every problem as something that I want to solve this problem, that having that positive mentality.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's so easy to say it, having that positive mentality.
True.
At that crucial time,
yeah.
You feel you have lost the journey. You feel you don't know what the next step is. So that resilience
is very important. And having the environment, as you just mentioned, like supporting people around you.
Absolutely.
If you have a partner that is supportive, of course, there's nothing like that. If not, then look for the places where you can find support because, and also I think one of the things that people underestimate is the time that it takes to become better at something.
Absolutely.
And we're living in a world where sort of seeing other people saying, I did this in 3 years time frame or 2 years time frame, I became a millionaire in such and such time frame. It kind of has caused people to think that maybe I'm not doing enough, right? There are other people doing better than me. So the process that you talked about is having the right support system and resilience. But that leads me to the next question, which is about the fear of judgments and failures.
Mm-hmm.
Have you failed at something? I really want to know, like, from your context, because I know that you are successful in what you have done so far in building this Sahayak that is such an instrumental and impactful platform for people. But did you fail at some of the things that you started?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I proudly say I failed. But at that moment, you feel, oh my God, like, why did I make those decisions? Because, if you look back, you have to make decisions, keeping in context that you're kind of paving a way for the next step. But the impact, as long as you have a controlled impact, and not allowing those decisions to kind of like making those random decisions. It has to be something you want to see that's the best moment. At that time, that is the best decision we could take.
Yeah. How do you deal with that emotional setback in a way that made you feel not enough? And the reason I wanted to talk about these things is because we're all struggling with this lack of grounding, this sense of extreme vigilance and intense experience of fear. And some people don't even start because they're afraid of failures.
Yeah.
And they might be the most talented people in the room, but they're like, what if I fail?
Right.
So when you failed, how did that made you feel? Was it more like, okay, this is an experience and I'll overcome it? Did you have a positive mindset? Did somebody help you during that time? Or was it like there was this time that you felt depressed for a bit and then you picked yourself up and started back again?
So it's a mix of everything. Definitely you have that support system, your family, your friends who trust you, your partners, your team. They all trust in your vision. And that's why they're part of your team. When you're trying to build something, when it's going to have an impact, you should never be happy with the short-term gains or short-term wins. You need to have that long-term thinking. And so when you hit a roadblock, you just need to take a step back and then revisit it and say, okay, we are at this roadblock situation. What do we do? What is it that we did, caused us to be here. Let's take a simple step back.
Yeah.
And that's where the resilience comes. Every day you're learning. It's like my journey is still unfolding. I cannot say I know everything. Every day you learn something. You meet friends. You meet people who are successful. You learn from their hard things. See, entrepreneurial journey, it looks colorful from outside. As you said, you look at these companies overnight, they're unicorns.
Yeah.
But nobody knows the internal side of it, the challenges. And some people believe that, okay, I have this great idea, but I'm scared to start because I might fail. Instead of having that, what if I fail? If you have that mentality, what if it works? That's a simple twist in the thinking, right? Because our brain, it doesn't understand the positive and the negative. It's what you're feeding your brain. I always believe in that. Rather than thinking, what if I fail? I always think in what if it works?
Yeah.
So that
And
kind of helps
either
me.
way, it's an emotional experience.
Absolutely.
So what I've learned from my journey of building my company and my brand and all that I do is having a little bit of detachment with the outcomes. Because you can never predict the future exactly in, set stone situation. You have to allow things to unfold with time. But in the moment, you can only put your best out there. You can only do what you can do. And if you continue to do, if you are consistent and showing up for yourself and for the work that you do,
Right.
it will drive results. There's no reason for it not to. And if it is still not bringing the right type of results, then there's an approach that needs to be reset. You need to change your strategy. You need to do it differently than what you're doing right now. But sense of detachment has helped me a little bit. Do you agree with that? Do you feel
I agree. Absolutely, I agree. That's what I'm telling you. It's like, it's a long-term thinking.
Yeah.
You're not like getting attached because thinking that if you define your success as, okay, if I achieve millions of dollars, I'm successful. When you have the detachment, when you see as a long-term plan and like your definition of a success will change.
Yeah.
You start becoming more like, the impact. Your impact mentality comes into picture.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to be so attached to something, because like when you say success, right? How are you defining success,
defining,
right?
and it could mean different things to different
Absolutely,
people.
yes.
Right? So what we're really saying is that define your own rules of success.
Yes.
And do not copy other people's journey, because you don't know what their journey looks like. You don't know when they're started. You don't know what all kind of support they have had or not had, their friends, their circumstances, their limitations. So everybody has their own journey.
Exactly.
And which is going to unfold in its own way, right?
Right.
Let's move to the next part where I want to talk about Sahayak. But before that, I wanted to touch base on one of the incidents where you mentioned that your mother was sick and you were living outside of the country, and that really triggered you. However, because India is a country where social fabric is something that combines people together, makes them feel more connected, makes them feel that they still have a lot of care around them. And when we talk about elder care in general, we do believe that, okay, our neighbors are going to take care, or I do have extended family and relatives, as much as like we see that in the United States where there's more nuclear families, in India who still have bigger families as well as larger social network. So why would you want to start something like this in a country where we still boast of our social network as to be the biggest strength?
You'll be surprised to note there are about 50 million Indians who are the age of 60 and above. In next 4 years, by 2030, that number is going to go to 340 million. Okay. 1 in 4 Indians will be categorized as an elders or a senior citizens. Okay. With globalization, with the opportunities, there are 70% of the families in India, they're nuclear. Well, I was growing up.
Is that the right number?
Yeah, absolutely.
75%?
70 to 75% of the families in India, they're nuclear. They don't have a support system, what they had, what our parent generation were used to. So now every family, the children either They leave their tier 2, tier 3 cities to go to tier 1 cities for better opportunities, for better economy, or people leave the country like me and you, I left India to come to United States to pursue my education. And one at a time, you do your bachelor's, you do your master's, then you get into a corporate, then you get married, then you have kids, then you're focused on, about your career, about your family, right? While our support system was our parents, who gave us that foundation to be what we are today. They're aging alone. I'm the only child. Like me, there are 32 million Indians or Indian diaspora living outside India.
Oh, wow.
And 70 to 80% of them have parents in India. They're aging. While we are focused here on our career and our personal life, our parents are aging. That guilt that we all have, when my parents need something, I am not there. The support system, as you said, yes, we have relatives, we have friends, even they have their own life. I can call my relative or I can call my friend or call my neighbor and say, hey, can you do this for my dad or mom? There's a limit. Then it gets to their mind and say, okay, so you are living outside. If you want to care for your parents, then you need to be here. But I cannot drop things here. Just think about it, right?
Yeah.
Once or twice, you can disturb them. But the situation becomes more serious. Emergencies can happen.
I never thought about this from this point of view because though my mom is having chronic kidney disease and she goes for dialysis 3 times a week, I have my brother living with my parents.
Yeah.
And of course, my father is there for support as well. So though I do worry, but I know that somebody is there, that's family.
Right.
So it eases out that pressure.
Right.
But I can imagine if your kids are outside and they are thousands of miles away, and if you don't have the coordinated care,
absolutely,
you're scattered. Of course, you have relatives, but you're right about the fact that they might not be available all the time, that the help is needed.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, in your case, your brother is there, your brother is working. If he is busy with his work and he has to travel, then, your support system drops.
Right.
So, because you don't have any backup plan. See, that's what most of the people do a mistake is they blindly assume things that we have a support system. The support system is something which is fragmented. It's not like a predefined. There's no guarantee that your neighbor is available all the time or your friends are available all the time. And when your parents need someone and if they don't have anybody, then what's the next step? Which is a very scary situation. I've been through that journey. It's like personally, I always assumed, my parents are doctors and they have the network and they get the help they need. But I was wrong.
Oh.
I was totally wrong. That's what kind of every NRI or Indian diaspora I talk to, that's what they tell me is, I don't know what to do, in case of an emergency. If my parents need someone, what do I do?
In that space, since you build that platform that connects people, that connects the families through a coordinated care, there are other variety of services that we get on the ground as well. And looking at the kind of support system, because we have cheap labor there. We have caretakers in a way that we can hire somebody who's live close by and they can come and do the daily chores or support with medication or any kind of other physical needs they have, cleaning the house or taking care of the daily stuff, the requirements. How different is this from all the services that are easily available and at a fraction of a cost? Like if you had to pay the similar kind of money in United States or anywhere else in the world, it would be much cheaper to get those services there, right?
I mean, definitely. When we were doing our study, I spent good 4 to 6 months in India before I started Sahayak. The very interesting data point that I learned was, as you said, all the services are available, but everything is fragmented. So if you want to have a caretaker, if you want to have a companion, if you want to have a maid, if you want to have a cook, if you want to have a driver, we're talking 5 different companies. So you need to be talking with 5 different companies, and with the time difference, people living in different time zones. You need to be up the whole night coordinating, when your driver doesn't show up or your caretaker doesn't show up. So then you're up the whole night calling them, like why this person is not coming. And you need to make all those arrangements, finding a replacement and all those things. So what we did is we built a trusted bridge between the children and the parents, and Sahayak becomes that one-stop shop, fully coordinated. It's a one-stop shop for all the elder care needs. It's a complete ecosystem for elder care.
Okay.
So we have partnered with some of the best providers. So as a children, if you are on Sahayak platform, based on your parents' requirements and needs, so you can arrange those things, because with Sahayak, there is a dedicated single point of contact, who we call it as a Sahayak, as the name Sahayak in Sanskrit means helper for life.
Yeah.
This person will coordinate. Every parent's requirements are unique. Some parents are super healthy. They don't need much of an help, but this gives you that safety net, that peace of mind. If something strikes, I don't have to worry. So I'm on the Sahayak platform, so I can help.
Something, it would be taken care of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about the companionship.
Yeah.
Or the companionship need with Eldercare. How did that idea come about? And I still have an assumption, because I am an Indian origin, that we do have like tons of people around us all the time. And then elder people have like long-term friendships. Is that incorrect to say that it's something that is just a cherry on the top type of thing, or is it a real requirement?
It is one of the most important requirements, one of the most popular service that a lot of our Sahayak subscribers use, because that's again the assumption of they have so many friends. India is, people are everywhere, right? But this companion is like a buddy. Okay, so for example, your mom, yes, you said, she goes for dialysis 3 times a week, and you have a support system. Okay, in my case, my dad and mom, that they need support, they need help. If my dad has to go for a doctor's visit or a consultation, I don't have anybody there, and my mom cannot accompany my dad, and my dad cannot go alone. So what do? I cannot ask that specialist to come home.
Yeah.
So I want my dad to go see the specialist.
Right.
So these companions, they come home, they accompany my dad, they take him to the doctors, be with him, and once the consultation is done, and based on what the doctor recommends, sometimes when you go for consultation, doctors say, you need to get your blood work done, you need to get your scan done, you need to get your x-ray done.
Yeah.
The hospital system in India hospitals are so huge. First of all, my dad, he cannot go on his own. Second of all,
there is a whole process
like
involved,
you're
right?
going from one counter to other counter.
Yeah.
It's like this companion is that like a proxy son. He's there.
Wow.
He's like doing all the paperwork, going to different counters, making that payment, and then, accompanying your dad. Even for your dad, it's a support system.
Right.
Those small things, you won't believe it. It's a companionship is not just for medical related. We help families who wants a companion to accompany them to go for social events.
Right.
They want to go shopping. With the traffic situation in India is so difficult.
Right.
And we have a family in Mumbai that we support. The father is 87 years old and he's alone. Children are overseas. And even though they have a 24 hours caretaker, but he has come from a tier 3 city, he's not educated, but he's there in the house, he'll cook for him and all those things. Father is highly intelligent, he likes playing a game of chess. So we have arranged for a companion who will visit him every Friday afternoons, 3 o'clock.
That's amazing.
And he comes and he plays chess with him for 2 hours.
Right.
And then they both go out and have chai, vada pav, and then they come back home.
Love that.
It's like you're giving that for elders, right? Once they feel, oh, I don't know what to do, their mentality, their emotions.
You're taking care of their holistic wellness, of
Absolutely.
their emotional being and emotional self,
Correct.
and engaging in the activities that they like to pursue,
Exactly.
and that makes them happy.
Yes.
So sending money
Yeah.
is not enough.
It's not enough.
Okay, so I want to say that a lot of us and a lot of the NRIs, people who are living outside of India, my friends and lots of people that I know of, they always mention that I send this much of money to my parents back home, and their needs are being met, and they arrange for the taxis or any kind of support that they need to do whatever basic that is supposed to be done. But here you're basically moving deeper into their wellness, which is inside out wellness, which is a holistic wellness,
Yes.
right? So sending money isn't enough. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, think about it, right? You're sending money, okay, they might use it for some expenses, right? They might use it to pay some bills. What they need is that human touch. Like, yes, you talk to your parents, and how many times, your parents are being open with you and tell you, I need help. You as a kid, you're sending money, and money doesn't measure or give them the missing piece.
Yeah.
So what Sahayak does is, we give you that, the emotional and human touch. What we see is the parents are missing. And we build that bridge so that money can solve a problem when you know what the problem is.
Yeah.
But the distance, the guilt, and feeling of not being there when my parents need me the most, money cannot replace me.
Yeah.
Right? Think about it.
Yeah.
If I am not able to support my family with that human touch, and if I send them money, that's not going to help them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
They're
need
still
to
going to
have that.
feel not enough supported. They're going to miss that connection.
Correct.
They're going to miss that somebody being there physically to take care of their needs.
Absolutely.
And it definitely makes a big difference.
Correct.
In terms of the preventive care that we spoke of earlier as well, because in case of emergencies, obviously there's a panic, there's a distress amongst family members when they're so far away. And I feel the same thing whenever I hear a phone call where my mom is saying that she's not feeling well. I'm like immediately panicked. And then I call my brothers, I call my father, like, I know that she's going to be okay, right? And for most of us who are here who do not have enough support back home, there's even more. I mean, I can totally imagine the kind of panic and distress they'll be experiencing. And emergency is one thing that you guys are providing as a service. In terms of preventive care, first of all, my question to you is why that is necessary and how you have structured that in your company.
Prevention is nothing but you being proactive, right? Then wait for an emergency to strike. So when emergency strike, we all know, we all panic. We pick up our phone, we call friends, family, or we go on the social media, look for help. They give you recommendation, then we go with the recommendation. So there's no vetting done, there is no trust. You're just going out there, you're trying to solve the problem. So instead of that, you're being proactive and proactively planning for things. And you are part of a structured platform. When whatever situation arises, you're not panicking because you've already taken the proactive measures.
Right.
So that's how we have built our platform. Is gives you that proactive awareness.
What type of proactive awareness is that? What type of things you'd fall into the category of preventive care?
Everything an elderly parent needs. Because if your parents are healthy, even if your parents are old, you cannot predict when there is a fall. You cannot predict when there is an emergency. Instead of waiting for that emergency to trigger, you're proactively created a structured plan.
Environment primarily, right? The solid environment, and also the predictability of environment.
Exactly.
Okay, this is what they can expect is going to happen. Are these Sahayaks also trained specifically for the one particular family? And since you also mentioned that every family is different, their requirements are different, their personalities might be different. So do you give options to them in a way that, okay, this person would have this kind of experiences of how they served earlier?
there's two things to it, right? Sahayaks are not the person who are giving you the service.
Mhm.
Sahayaks are the single point of contact.
Okay.
Okay. So when you say caregivers or companions, they all go through the training.
Mhm.
So Sahayaks are somebody who's a care coordinator, your single point of contact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the main person that they gotta be dealing with pretty much, or the NRIs who are living out of India
Yes.
will be
So,
meeting.
so every NRI family will be assigned a Sahayak,
Got it.
who will be the single point of contact, who will coordinate. They become like a proxy son or a daughter. What you would have done living in India, coordinating things, arranging things for the parents. That's what all our Sahayaks do. So Sahayaks will work with us. Every parent's requirements are unique.
Right.
Some needs a 24 hours caretaker because mom or dad is bedridden. And even in that case, some people are going to dementia, some people are going to Parkinson's. In dementia, there are different categories. So we work with our trusted partners, vetted partners to find that profile match.
And have the background match and
100%.
safety as well, which is also very important, right?
All the caregivers, the vendors, and the partner that we work with, they all come with the fully background verified, police verified. We match the profile. And we share that information with our subscribers so that they get to know who the person will be going home to take care of their parents. We keep it completely transparent because the number one issue is, how do I trust this person?
Right.
So we have taken a lot of effort to make sure that not only trust, you need to have that empathy.
Yeah.
Which is very important.
Yeah.
Because this is not a product we are selling.
Right.
It's not even a service we are selling, right? We are bridging that gap.
Right.
So there is two impacts here, which I love it. One is impact to the children. When I get calls from the children living overseas, now I can finally sleep in peace so that I know my parents
Are being taken care of. And also, I think there is a sense of guilt that always sort of being experienced by NRIs. But there's also the truth in expanding your own horizons and, exercising bigger opportunities.
Right.
People do get out of their own houses. People do get out of their own countries to find better opportunities and explore more for them. And part of this equation also involves leaving behind the older people and having this sense of guilt that I'm not around them. Like, what's the use of any success in my life if I can take care of them? But at the same time, your own success and your own life matters too. And you're putting in so much of hard work and build things for yourself, and you just can't just let go of everything and go back.
Exactly.
So I also feel that I have empathy for NRIs who are working super hard to make good life for themselves and also for their kids. But at the same time, they're just always divided, in this experience of not being together.
Correct.
And feeling like the guilt about it.
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the things, we are trying to solve the problem.
Right.
Be that, go-to person, be that trusted entity where, the distance should no matter anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Because as you can see, the technology is so advanced. You can work from anywhere. So you don't feel like, you're working with teams in different countries, like you don't feel that, there's a distance there.
Right.
When it comes to parents, that emotions, you still feel, oh my God, I'm thousands of miles away from my parents. Why is that? When you don't feel like, the world is now so encapsulated as a one piece that you can be anywhere in the world, but you can still do whatever you want to do. But caring for the parents, not only just the Indians, every other diaspora, right? They have the same emotional bonding.
Yeah.
We feel the distance.
Right.
That's the problem we are solving.
Right.
The impact that it has on the parents and the impact.
I wanted to ask that actually. That next question was about the experience that of the impact that you've already brought in. I'd love to know any specific conversation that you have had with any NRI or their parents of how they turned things around for them, how are they feeling about it, or any of those incidents that you like to
Absolutely. I can share few incidences. Some of the incidences, like last year, when there was this immigration announcement that happened and people were stuck, they were asked not to leave the country and go. And people reached out. They had scheduled to go to India because their father was going for a bypass surgery. And he's stuck in the airport. He cannot leave. He doesn't have anybody there. And he reached out to Sahayak, and Sahayak took care of everything. And that satisfaction for us that, we were be able to be that entity for their family and be able to get the treatment what father needed because son couldn't come.
Right.
That's huge because, for him, he's feeling stuck, he's feeling helpless. And for the father, he has to go for the surgery.
Right.
There's nobody there.
They're feeling alone and unsupported in
Correct.
that moment.
And that, it's not something which can be, you can, delay it.
Right.
Or reschedule this. It has to be done.
Right.
And we had one more situation where the mother is admitted in the hospital and father is sick. There are no children to take care. And you didn't want the mother to feel like I'm an orphan, I don't have anybody. So we arranged for people to be in the hospital. And, to hear that feedback from our clients that you're God sent,
Yeah.
those are very powerful words. But for us, that's the impact.
Right.
And even my case, like last year, December, as I said, I'm myself a subscriber and I use the services of Sahayak. When my father was sick and, the caretaker used to update me and, a situation became bad, he has to be taken to the hospital. From the ER, he went to ICU. And then from ICU, I get a call that we need to put him on a ventilator. I'm here. And it's the people who are helping me or people who are giving me that support. And I went to India, ultimately. I took a next flight and I went to India. But
the time frame.
That if nobody was there, if that my support was not there, what I would have done. Because my mom, she cannot leave the house.
Physically, she can't.
She's not physically fit. She itself, she's on a walker. She can't even do anything much. Even though she's a doctor, she cannot do. The guilt in her, I'm not able to take care of my husband.
Yeah.
It's those panic attacks. But for me, I knew the support system is there. It was not like how my life would have been without Sahayak.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can totally imagine that would have been so distressful.
Exactly.
Because it takes time to catch a flight. It's normally a time frame of at least 24 hours. 48 hours to get to the country that's so far away.
Correct. And in that 24, 48 hours, a lot of things can happen.
Right.
If you don't have the support system,
right.
That's where I say, I was proactive in planning things, having the structure.
Right.
So, yes, I was stressed about my father's situation. I was not stressed about who's there to take care of him.
There's a different kind of stress, which is natural.
Which natural, because you have that emotions.
Right.
Right. But if I didn't add both.
Nitin, I'm very curious about some of the questions that people ask you before joining the platform.
A lot of very interesting questions or interesting conversation that we go through when we are talking with people. Because one thing is they're so used to kind of, having this caregiver care mentality. What they've used to, what they've heard from people is they don't know what all parents need. The question they ask us is, can you help us plan something for my parents? They say, okay, my dad, he has problem walking. My mom cannot help my dad, but they both like socializing. So how do you solve my problem? Or how do you customize something for us?
Right.
So we personally listen to every story, every requirement, and then we help them with the best of our knowledge on what will solve that problem. Like for this,
how about the accessibility? Because in terms of the care, though we do have fragmented care, but we do have pretty decent price point in terms of the care that we can get in country like India for now. And accessibility is one thing that should be a part of this equation as well. So are people concerned about how much do we need to pay for this kind of service, or do you have tiers and different services that are added on top of that? Just curious about like how this is structured.
So that's a good question. So we don't sell a package. Okay, all we do is a simple subscription. Okay, with a simple subscription, I always say $1 a day keeps your worries at bay. So that's our mantra. As simple as $1 a day, right? So with $1 a day, you'll be assigned a Sahayak, who will be the single point of contact. And based on your needs, you pay as you go. Since we have a wide network of partners who are experts in different aspects of life, like, from a companion to an advanced nurse. We even help families if they want to set up an ICU at home.
Right.
To someone, we have a client now in Jammu. So they need a companion in Jammu.
Right.
You can't even think.
Is it like a dating service you're offering to? Have you extended yourself in that category or no?
No. Somebody asked me that question about, a single dad, a single mom, do you offer matchmaking?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I said, that's not a bad idea. If they're going to find a companion there or a soulmate, why not?
It's a data. You have the data, right?
Correct.
It can always work out, right?
Somebody asked me that question. And one thing that I want to stress on that is we get the services to their own house. Okay. We don't want our parents to get out of the house that they built. They saw their children grow. They saw their grandkids play in that house just because we cannot care for them.
Right.
That they need to move out of their house and go to an assisted living or a senior center.
Exactly.
That is not to our Indian,
values.
Values, because that's very important.
I'm thinking through like having this conversation with you, and there's one thing that came to me again and again is the idea that eldercare is not only limited to health and emergencies and, older people needing the medication and doctor visits. It's so much beyond that. And they do have the right to access the experiences of life.
Absolutely.
That they did when they were younger.
Correct.
And the fact that those experiences in a normal circumstance would be provided by the family, but unfortunately family is not living together. So how could we provide them similar experiences and comfort and the experiences of life that are nurturing their mind and also that helps them live longer?
Yes.
So eldercare is not just limited to health, but it's probably their emotional activation and different type of activities they can be a part of, which is absolutely amazing. And I think that's the best thing that I could take out from this learning from you, that Sahayak has built this platform that is not just limited to only one thing, but is extending itself in different directions.
I'll give you an example. Not all parents are tech savvy, right? Everybody has a phone, but they're not comfortable using apps. So with Sahayak being assigned to a family, if a family member, if they want to eat some food, like, evening they want to eat a snack, we are so used to using, like Uber Eats. In India is Swiggy or Zomato. Thus elders cannot use that. So we at Sahayak, we will order for them. So they enjoy, okay, wow, this is so fascinating. Like I'm able to get vada pav delivered at my house in less than 10 minutes.
Amazing.
If an elderly parent wants to eat an ice cream, okay, they don't know how to use the tech. We have built a structure where we can provide that.
That's amazing.
And, everybody has technical challenges.
Right.
So we helped a family where a mom wanted to buy a smartphone. And they waited for months because they couldn't find someone to take her to the store so that she can buy the phone she wants. Yes, you can order online. You can order through Amazon or Flipkart in India. The phone comes, but who's going to set up a phone for her?
Right.
So we help the families with that. Those
The
small things.
Yes. That could be like big stressors.
Yes.
It's just absolutely amazing what I'm hearing from you. And it's so impactful now because now as we're talking beyond just the emergency situation that a lot of people in general worry about, here what we're saying is elder care is a lot of things.
Yes.
Right? And giving them that quality of life that they are missing. My question to you is, are are the parents also excited about this opportunity, this platform? And have you ever seen an experience where an elder person told their kids to get me on this structured program where I can have this elder care? Or is it still like not the conversation that elders are having with their kids?
I would say about 10% were open-minded and they openly ask for help. It's only 10% right now. The remaining 90%, there's a pushback. The pushback meaning is how they see an elder care. So they think now, they're dependent. Now they don't have the freedom to do what they want. Now there is somebody involved in their life, some third party. Or it's the social stigma of somebody making them feel, oh, your kids don't have time to take care of you, so they've hired somebody to take care of you.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's very common in India. So our messaging is very different. We don't make the parents feel that they've lost their freedom or there's somebody like a big brother watching them. What we have created is a safety net. We are on standby. If they need any help, we are there to help them.
Right. I'm kind of curious about the conversation that children are having with their parents when they appoint Sahayak. Do you also train them on how to communicate this value? Do you also set up like the calls with the parents separately to explain them the value? Since you mentioned about the pushback, are you sort of like making this a comfortable onboarding process so that everybody is relaxed about like what they're going to experience?
Absolutely. Because usually we are approached by the children first.
Right.
As I said, very few parents have actually approached us and they have informed their children, hey, I want to be on a platform like this, which is awesome. And they are educating their friends, who are in the same age category, whatever it is, and people are reaching out. So when the children reach out and then they share with us their pain points, the struggle that they're facing, the challenges that they're facing in providing the help for their parents and the guilt they face. So we structure them in such a way that, okay, this is how the Sahayak is structured for you.
Right.
This is how it works. And they'll be like, okay, my parents are very orthodox. They don't understand the Sahayak culture. How do you help us to kind of position them so that they enjoy the services? We want them to enjoy the services.
Right.
So we kind of help the families, kind of navigate through the challenges.
Right.
And once the parents start talking to our Sahayaks, now I start hearing complaints from the children, oh, my parents talk to the Sahayak more than they talk to me. Because the thing is, every parent like to talk.
Right.
And when the parents know we have a busy schedule, one is the time difference.
Right.
I call my parents every single day. From the last 27 years, I'm outside India. Yeah. Every single day. It doesn't matter which part of the world I am, I call them.
Yeah.
And what is the duration of my call? It's
depending on...
No, it's maximum 120 seconds.
Okay.
There are days where I talk more, but usually because they know I'm busy with my own stuff. It is casual conversation. Everything fine? Are you good?
Yeah.
Anything? I'm sure they would love to talk to me more.
Yeah.
But they avoid because they think that, I might be busy.
Yeah, taking up a lot of your time. Yeah.
So when you have a friendly person that you're, talking to you, learning things from you, and a lot of our Sahayaks, they talk to the parents, they explore them about the recipes they like to do.
Right.
They're bringing their life back.
Yeah.
That you're giving them, I wouldn't call it as a rebirth. It's just like, now they're happy. Okay, somebody is interested to learn.
Energized.
Exactly.
There's a conversation that is also energizing them and making them something to look forward to.
Correct.
And that's such an instrumental thing that you guys are able to provide that.
Because think about it, right? And I will not call my parents and ask them, Mom, what did you like when you were growing up?
Right.
Because I think I've asked that question when I was growing up and I've moved on.
Yeah.
right? So now somebody new wants to be your companion, your partner, your friend.
Right.
Now they're bringing their life back. They're
Right.
giving them that passion, the motivation for them to kind of enjoy life.
Right.
They look forward to talking to Sahaayak
Right.
because they have stories to tell.
Nitin, as we're coming closer to our podcast, I'd love to know about your plans further. How are you envisioning the growth of such a platform? And right now, it seems that it's pretty successful and it is growing further. It's growing faster. And I'm sure a lot of competitors are going to also come into this place. What are your plans of expansion?
So as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, the one thing that I always enjoyed was I was always curious and I love problem solving. And technology is something I cherished and I've been in that field. And I see how technology has advanced, which definitely helps every entrepreneur, every founder to utilize the technology. As you all know, AI is there everywhere.
Right.
We love to utilize AI in doing some predictive analytics. Like based on the commonality, based on the patterns that we see from other elders, we can provide that recommendation to the elders who have not thought about it.
Yeah.
So simple stuff like that. And with advancement in technology, as you all know, I love WhatsApp.
Right.
Because that's one common communication platform, where you can talk to anyone. You can, do video call. You can share files. We use a lot of WhatsApp in our services aspect.
Okay.
Because it's easier. For families to talk. You have siblings and your parents, and you have, our structured point of contact.
Right.
They all are able to communicate at the same time.
Right.
So making the best use of the technology, and, as I said, with, even
AI
though...
coming into the picture.
Yes.
This is going to grow way more interactive in nature and can give you the data points where you could solve more problems.
Absolutely.
And offer more quality
Correct.
services.
Quality of service. But there is always that human first approach, which I strongly believe, because technology cannot replace everything. You need to have that human first and then the tech. Make the best use of the technology that is there available today.
Right.
Which basically makes things easier.
Right.
And gives you access to best in class.
Absolutely.
So that's what I love about technology. It helps you solve a problem quicker, faster, and effective.
Right.
And with AI, it makes it even more faster and even more better.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nitin. Before we close today's podcast, this is one question that I ask everybody who is a guest on the show. What is true power for you? And how do you define true power in your experience?
Thank you, Simi. It was great being here. That's a very powerful question. I love that. See, in my case, true power, being an entrepreneur, is never about the title, never about the money. It's never about what's your status in the society. For me, the true power is the impact. How many families I'm able to give them that peace of mind? How many families or elders I'm able to see them smile and enjoy? If I'm able to bridge that, what children are facing today, especially the Indian diaspora, that the guilt in them, and the parents are missing what they deserve the best. If I can achieve that, for me, that is my true power.
Love it. That's beautiful. And I really wish you and Sahayak tremendous success in the coming times. And thank you once again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Simi. It was wonderful meeting you. And I love having the conversation with you.
Thank you so much.